State of Play, the pre-debate edition. Our familiar faces are back. Stephanie Hansen of the law firm of Young Conaway, Stargett and Taylor, and Charlie Copeland, president of Associates International, a graphics and printing company. Welcome.
Thank you.
Earlier in the show, we talked about the race for the lieutenant governor. And do you think the lieutenant governor, Matt Dinn, has any reason to worry in this race?
I don't think so. Matt is very well liked. He's been around for a long time. He was great as an insurance commissioner. He takes a lot of time to stay connected to the voters. He's seen as very down to earth. He's very friendly. I don't think he has a problem. I'm going to say 60% or above, he brings it in.
I don't think he's going to break 60%. In 2008, he just barely broke 60%, and that was in the year in which the Obama-Biden ticket had much more energy than it has today. And we already know that Obama and Biden are going to do very well in the state. Markell's going to do very well, but I think that the turnout's going to be different, and so Matt does have a problem. I don't know that I agree that he interacts with people as well as Cher does, but of course he's got Jack Markell coattails to ride in on, Tom Carper coattails to ride in on, and Cher has to frankly make her own way, and that is probably more of the difficulty that she's going to face than Matt. Is just how do you meet enough people and get them to actually focus on that race and make a determination.
You talk about Dinn riding Markell's coattails. Do you think in Delaware the governor and lieutenant governor should be on the same ticket?
I think I do. And I ran as a lieutenant governor candidate back in 2008, and you go out and you put your own team together, you raise your own money and all that kind of thing. But let's be honest, the lieutenant governor's duties are slim, and you preside over the Senate, and if there's a tie vote, you get to throw the tiebreaker, and other than that, you serve on the Board of Pardons and one or two other things. But the rest of it is, what does the governor have you to do? Which is why Matt is actually working part-time at a law firm, because I think he's got nothing else to do. And so I think if you run as a ticket, the governor is more likely to give you things to do, and therefore it's more worth the taxpayers' money and you get something out of it.
Same ticket, Stephanie?
I don't think so. I don't think so, because I think people like the ability to choose. They don't want to be told, well, if you vote for the governor, the lieutenant governor comes along, or say you like the lieutenant governor and you got to vote for the governor. I think Delawareans prefer the ability to choose and to have the ability to split their ticket, because they notoriously split their ticket when it comes to voting.
Well, let's move on to the GOP nominee for the 19th state senatorial district, Eric Bodenweiser. I want to get this tune into your head, and you heard the rumors that he may have disappeared, but listen to this tune, listen to this clip.
Bodenweiser, 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 Bodenweiser. Once upon a time there was a candidate, Eric Bodenweiser for the state senate. He's the conservative Republican. Eric Bodenweiser will get the job done.
Eric says,
I am the conservative candidate.
Eric says,
Bigger government is not the solution.
Eric says,
Visit ericmodi.com.
Eric Bodenweiser's a Republican.
What do you think?
It's kitschy.
I remembered it from 2 years ago. I still remembered it when he ran 2 years ago. That's one of the few commercials I actually do remember. To say that he is far right, far right, is probably an understatement. So I'm not really on board with the train, but I certainly recognize the commercial. It's a very effective radio spot.
Yeah, I mean, when in politics, especially down ticket races, a lot of it comes down to name ID and positioning in that regard, and it certainly gets across. It's going to cut through the chatter that you're going to hear on the radio, and is certainly going to be a unique spot. And so from that perspective, I think it's somewhat effective. It's not. We all loved Good and Plenty, so I guess there's some remembrance of that. And as a Charlie, I think Charlie Says was not a bad spot.
Let's talk about his defeat. Well, he defeated actually Joe Booth in the state senate. Is that a big loss for Delaware? For Dover, actually.
I let the Republican talk.
Yeah, since it was a Republican knockdown, dragout. I don't think that it sends a very broad message. All politics is local, and Joe Booth, whom I've known a long time, and a very successful politician, both in Georgetown in the state house and in the state senate, sort of hurt himself a few years back when he took a job with a school district just after an election, and I think that was some repercussions from that, and I don't know that. I think that it will be interesting to see how it plays out in the general election, who came out to show up in the primary versus who's going to show up in a general election.
Well, Bodenweiser calls himself a conservative. We heard that on the radio spot. So does Brian Pettyjohn. What do you think about that guy?
I think that it was successfully done as far as a write-in candidacy in Newark for perhaps the same sort of underlying reason, which is once everyone got a look at what the ticket was actually going to be, there was enough of a groundswell, kind of a low boil groundswell that said, oh my gosh, we can't let this happen. And so a write-in candidate actually won for the Newark City Council. I think, Brian Pettyjohn is well known in Georgetown. He was a good mayor. It's not like all of a sudden somebody just woke up and decided, oh, I'm gonna spend my life doing public service. This is not a candidate that's like that. I think he has a pretty good shot at it.
I agree with that analysis. I think that the Democrat candidate is not a particularly great candidate. She's run before for some things down there. Is known, but not a great candidate. And Eric Bodenweiser has run before and lost, and I think he was running against a somewhat damaged Joe Booth. And so now the question is, do you have the ability to have a write-in candidate that brings enough? And it is a conservative district. Brian is a conservative guy, but he may be considered more mainstream conservative in that district than Eric Bodenweiser is.
Well, I want to pick your brain, Charlie, especially since you're the Republican on set. Will the Republicans pick up any seats in the Senate?
I think the Republicans will pick up one seat in the Senate. They may pick up two. They're at 7, so that'll get them to 9, which would be more than they've had in at least a decade. So no, I think the Republicans will pick up 1 and very likely 2.
What about the House?
That's a different issue. I'm not sure the Republicans are going to pick up. The way the districts were drawn, they dropped 2 just out of the gate, and they'll pick up 1 of those, I think, downstate. But in Newcastle County, that's going to be tough for them to do. So I think if they break even at best.
You agree, Seth?
I don't know. Which 2 seats in the Senate?
I think that they pick up the seat where Ernie Lopez is running downstate. I think they pick up the Greg Lavelle wins the 4th Senate district, which was my old seat, and there's a chance that perhaps Scott Unruh takes out Bruce Ennis, whose voting record has been extremely liberal in what is a fairly conservative district.
That's really interesting. The races that I think were interesting to watch too is certainly the Katz and Lavelle race, because
they've been pretty popular too. Yeah.
Well, they're both popular.
Yeah.
I mean, Katz has sort of distinguished himself as being kind of more of an independent, sort of with the Karen Peterson group, fighting for more of the populist view when it wasn't popular with the Democrats, and then with the defeat of Tony DeLuca, he's got a little bit of maybe he was right. Maybe he and Karen were right. So he does have some real push behind him. But then Greg Lavelle's been around for a long time as well. Connects very well with the people in his district. So I think that's going to be a very close race to watch. So I agree with you. That's a real close one. I'm also curious to see the Ennis and Unruh race. That's kind of been the sleeper for a while. I know that the Republicans have really targeted that seat. Just as the Democrats have targeted Dory Connor with Nicole Poore in the Newcastle area. So I think we've got the parties really focusing on the Connor-Poore race in Newcastle area and on the Ennis and Unruh race in southern Newcastle County. So I'm going to be curious to see. I tend to think, though, that unlike DeLuca, Ennis doesn't have kind of the baggage or the negative connotation that I think Tony did. So I think Unruh's I don't know that we're going to see a Townsend DeLuca sort of upset in that race, but we'll see.
Yeah, exactly. We'll definitely see. Thanks so much, Stephanie and Charlie. We look forward to seeing you next week, so we'll have a lot to talk about then. You can check out the Web Extra version of this segment by clicking on State of Play when you go to newsworks.org/Delaware.